back to another episode of Startup Wins. I'm Brandon, your host, and today we are actually fortunate to have the CEO of a fintech startup here in Miami called Gail, Matthew. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Can't complain.
Yeah, so Matthew Vega-Sanz, actually, right, is CEO of an AI insurance company. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it started off, we started off with a premise of there was going to be a bunch of nerds that were going to build the most powerful insurance AI the world has ever seen. It was going to know everything about the laws, regulations, administrative processes, industry trends, and whatnot. And then once you had that really powerful and knowledgeable AI on this specific topic, you can deploy it in a million different ways. And so we started ideating it about 3 years ago, really went all in on it about 15 months ago, and it started off with insurance. And then once we started going out there in the market, one of the things people don't realize is a lot of banks have insurance divisions, a lot of insurance have lending divisions, or work with credit unions, or they have sister companies. And so we started getting a lot of groups that said, hey, our procurement department's only going to approve on AI. Could you guys teach us AI about mortgages and lending and all that? And we said, yeah, sure. Saying anything like any startup to win the deal. And then eventually we had to train it on all these financial services topics, not just insurance. And so now we support banks, lenders. Insurance is still like our main one because that's where my brother and I spent the last 10 years of our life. But that's what it started. It's just now it's ultimately evolved super powerful and knowledgeable AI on financial services, more specifically banking, lending, insurance. And then because it's hyper intelligent, you can deploy it as a GPT that's an expert in banking, or you can deploy it as these AI agents that are able to speak on the phone, on text message, web chat, WhatsApp, and the list goes on.
Well, let's rewind a little bit, Matthew, because you had a startup before this, maybe even two, right? So and on top of that, you did the typical Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg thing, and dropped out of college, right? So can you dial back a little bit back?
Yeah, for sure. And the first startup was funny because it was my brother and I never had any plans on starting a business. We went to a small school called Babson College. And even though it's known for entrepreneurship, we went over there because we wanted to work in investment banking and private equity, and they had a pretty good program. And so we went over there for that. And then one night, Michael, my brother, we were bored. It was a pretty bad snowstorm. It was our first semester. It was my first semester there as a Miami boy in the winter. And all of a sudden, you're locked in, and the only place I would deliver was Domino's Pizza, which I wasn't a fan of. And so we tried calling the local Papa John's, they wouldn't deliver, and so we ordered Domino's, and my brother walks outside, he sees a parking lot packed to capacity, and he's like, man, it'd be cool if we could rent one of those cars and go pick up the pizza. And then we started ideating back and forth, and eventually we said, hey, let's build it. We really have nothing else to do on the weekends and stuff. And so we applied to a business competition at Babson. It started to pick up some traction, and then we said, hey, let's actually build this thing. And then it took us about like 18 months to build in between classes and stuff, and we launched it September 1st, 2018, and within like 7 days, we were top 100 app on the App Store.
Wow.
And it went viral because it was the first app that let college students rent cars from each other with no underage restrictions. And so a few months go by, we end up becoming quickly the second biggest car sharing app in North America, with members more than 500 campuses in all 50 states. And then COVID came and it basically killed the business. And so we had dropped out midway through that point because when we started seeing the traction, we thought we were gonna be like Zuckerberg's. And then when COVID hits, we are forced to move back in with our parents. At this point, we have no money to college dropouts. And then when people saw that business, they thought the magic was that an 18-year-old can rent a car from another student for $5 an hour, $20 a day. The magic was actually the insurance. You had to run a bunch of background checks in a moment's notice. You had to organize tens of thousands of policies on a single weekend for all these trips, manage all these claims. And so when COVID shut down college campuses, we started getting contacted by different groups that said, hey, we have to use 15 or 20 different vendors to run all of our background checks and manage our policies and manage our claims. So we just licensed these insurance management automations you guys have built. And then we said, yeah, sure. And so that was how we ultimately started our second business. And that's really the one that changes our life. Lula, we did that for about 3 years, grew it to right under 50 mil in ARR, and then we exited the business in late 2024, and then kind of just went full time on Gail after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, God, what is it, 2018 to now, so 7 years since college, and you guys dropped out what year, junior year or sophomore year?
We had transferred because we were both playing basketball down here doing JUCO, and then when we got there, he got there a semester before me because I wanted to go to NYU, he wanted to go to Babson. NYU didn't give me any money. He got like a full ride to Babson, so my dad said just wait 1 semester and apply to see if you get the same thing as him. And so I waited 1 semester, I applied, and I got it. And so I only did 3 semesters at Babson before I dropped out. So I was technically a sophomore because they didn't accept most of my credits from being down here. And then he was technically going into his junior year because he was 1 semester ahead. So yeah, we still had quite a bit of school left.
Well, I'll be honest, I was interviewing another founder who hit 50 million ARR recently, and they were actually valued as a unicorn at one point. So congrats, I mean, Jesus Christ, $50 million on your second startup.
Yeah, we were blessed. We got great multiples. We didn't get to the billion, but we were very blessed with the multiples we got.
Well, we were just talking about a little while ago, you're first generation, so your parents, we were joking, maybe proud on some days, but tell us a little bit about how your parents feel about this, all the success and whatnot.
It's funny because my parents, it's funny to see how their mental model has shifted too. So like Michael, my brother, one of the reasons why we decided to stay in Miami this time around, we could have built the company anywhere, was one, it was just home for us, but two, we remember when we first got started, there really wasn't anybody that a young Hispanic you could look up to. Like, yes, you could look up to Evan Spiegel and Gates and stuff, but those guys came from such different backgrounds, it was hard to resonate with them. And so my brother and I wanted to be that for this next generation in Miami, and he always says, he's like, because of the exposure we got, it's our responsibility to increase the collective ambition of this community. And it's been funny because my parents, we've been able to see how their levels of ambition and thinking have grown too. And so it's really like they've benefited from it greatly. I think one, because they're having a lot of fun seeing everything that we're doing. But two, I think it's also just like, it was so unexpected. We grew up on a small farm, and so when people think about Miami, they think about the boats and all that. We grew up on a small farm, so completely different background. And so this was never anything that any of us expected. And so I think more than anything, my parents are having a bunch of fun, and I think now they're starting to learn about random stuff. Now that, and especially my dad, who's fairly inquisitive, he's enjoying it too, because of our background in insurance, and now we're dealing with big numbers and big contracts and stuff, and we have customers in 12 countries. They get to travel with us all over the place, and so I think more than anything, they're having fun. And I think it's been a nice surprise, and we're lucky that my sister works with us too. My older brother, he doesn't work with us, but he also owns his own business, and he's done fairly well for himself. And so I think my parents are having a lot of fun, but I think there was probably a few years they were a little concerned because it didn't look like it was gonna all work out.
They thought it was a gamble.
Yeah, they for sure, because they always wanted me to finish college, and because they never had the chance to finish college either. They started working really young, and so I never even wanted to drop out of college. I remember trying to convince Babson, like, hey, it's gonna be temporary, I'll be back soon. And funny enough, it was my dean of students. I was like, no, drop out. He's like, Babson will still be here if you want to come back in a year. This opportunity may not. And so that hurt me because I had always envisioned myself getting the diploma, and then it hurt my parents too, I think, a little bit, but I think when they saw how hard we were working, we weren't jackassing around with it, it made them feel way better.
Yeah. Well, maybe Babson needs to listen to this podcast and give you an honorary degree.
They should. I actually collect a check for how many students I convinced to go there. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, having this nice exit, but we'll get back to that here in a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Gail, because you did really well with Lulu, and now, or Lula, I apologize. Lulu, I think, is a fashion brand, but Lula, and then now into Gail. Well, is there actually, Gail, for some reason, it makes me think of something. Gail wins, or why'd you guys call it Gail?
we wanted it to be something human-like. We wanted to have a name, and so my brother and I have never been the type that said, "Oh, we want to build an AI company." We just wanted to build a company that solved problems with the most efficient technology and made sense at that time. Today just happens to make sense that it's AI, and so we wanted something that could be a play on words. So if you go into our website, we were very intentional to not name it Gail.ai. It's meetgail.com. So it's almost like you're meeting somebody. You go onto the front page, there we do talk about AI, but it's like, "Hi, I'm Gail, the AI for financial services." So it's almost like you're introducing itself. When we talk about Gail, we talk about it having a career trajectory, starting off at one part of your business. And so we had this whole plan towards it, and so we wanted it to be something cool. We wanted it to be something easy to say. We wanted, again, to have an ode to what inspired us, which was AI, but not make everything about AI. And so that's why the AI in the name. And so that's ultimately how it came together. And then originally too, it was meant to be a part of our previous business, Lula. And so it started off as Gen AI by Lula. And then as time went on, we just fell in love with the name, and we loved the fact that it sounded relatively human.
Yeah.
And so now we have people that refer to Gail as, like, if they're speaking to a person, like, "Oh, Gail's doing such a good job for me," or I didn't know Gail speaks Portuguese. I just heard it in a call the other day. And so it's really neat. But that's kind of how we got the name for it. And again, we wanted to make sure that even though it does have the AI in it, it didn't become the whole brand. Because what happens in 10 years, 20 years, when maybe you're doing something completely different as part of one of your business lines.
Yeah. Well, will Gail expand beyond Miami, or, so we're here in Miami Beach, actually, Miami Beach, and I didn't know there was a fintech community, and it was kind of you to be here today, but the finance world typically is New York City, some of the larger capitals of the world. So how are you thinking in terms of Miami and Gail and the future?
I think for us, my brother and I were fortunate with how the last company played out, but I think we didn't take it as far as we wanted it to go. I think this one now we have a little bit more optionality. We know how to navigate the waters. This is the one that we take all the way. And so this is a business I want to still be involved in 70 years. And so I have global aspirations. We always talk about, at some point, there's going to be humans living in the solar system. We want to build the pipes that power financial services across the solar system and all of that as well. I think before that, we need a practice run here on Earth. And so Miami was the first one, but we're already operating now, and I think it's 10 or 11 countries. We'll get into our 12th country in the next couple of months. And so we definitely had plans to expand out of Miami from a business perspective. Now, in terms of people, we're growing as well. We already have our office in Palo Alto. We're opening up an office in Mexico. We're announcing a large Series A in about 6 weeks or so. And so we're definitely growing, but Miami will always be the home base. One, again, because it's home for us, but two, I think there's actually a massive competitive advantage being based out of Miami. One, you don't have as much competition from the news, from recruiting, from investors, and so if you have a good business with good foundations, you almost have a monopoly on talent, and a monopoly on attention, and a monopoly on capital. I think the other thing people don't realize is there's like 4 out of the top 10 investors on the Midas list that have their primary residence here. Even though they might not blast it on Twitter, they do. And then you obviously have guys like Ken Griffin and whatnot that are coming here. You have all the guys coming from California, and so I think Miami's an incredible place. I think the other thing too that gets understated is the global opportunities here. Miami is a direct flight from anywhere across the world, and so if we want to go sell AI to a bank in Spain or a bank in New York or an insurance company in Brazil, we can get into any of those in less than 10 hours and go close a deal. The same can't necessarily be said if you're living out on the West Coast. So I actually think it's a pretty big advantage being here for somebody that's working in the world of financial services like us.
Yeah, no, I heard Bezos has a place over here.
Yeah, he does, and I mean, it's also incredible too. You have guys like Eric and Kareem from Ramp. They've built probably the most incredible modern day fintech, and they're based out of here. The guys, there's a number of incredible people from Brex that are also based out of here as well. You have Zaid from Flex that also lives, and I'm pretty sure they're headquartered here. And so you have a really strong community. I think people just don't realize it because we're busy working, and while others are busy tweeting.
Well, maybe I was going to ask you, the next question was, what made you different from perhaps maybe all the other students who did finish school, or you know, the folks that didn't hit 50 million ARR? What do you think were the special things? Was it you working your asses off, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think you talk to anybody that knows my brother and I personally. I've heard the stories that are like how hard a lot of these incredibly successful founders. I don't know if it's possible for us to work any harder. I mean, we're ruthless when it comes to with our work ethic. I think the other thing too that allowed us to have any level of success is, at least for my part, I recognized early on that while my work ethic was probably above average, everything else in my life was relatively average. My grades were average. My ability to sell was average. I wasn't the greatest product person. I had no shortcoming. A never-ending list of shortcomings, and because I had pretty good self-awareness, that forced me to become maniacal about reading and studying others. It's almost like you walk into my office, I probably have 200 or 300 books scattered all over the office, and I've read almost all of them. And it's almost all on founders, business people, politicians that have done really incredible things. And my whole thing is just I want to learn from them. They're formidable individuals. What can I take from them to be formidable? And I think that's probably the biggest thing that separated me from the rest was, even though I dropped out, my education never ended. And the other thing too is just like this insatiable desire to learn. And I was willing to be bad at things and look like an idiot at times, asking dumb questions in order to learn. And I think that probably is one of the things that's helped me separate myself. And then I'd say the other thing is, and I don't know what my parents did to instill this, but I've always dreamt super big. So for those watching, you can't tell, but I'm not very tall. I'm 5'9" on a good day. And so I wanted to be an NBA player. My parents never once told me, hey, you're a little Hispanic boy, like you're not gonna go to the NBA. They let me dream it. And so because of that, anytime I had a crazy idea, my parents wouldn't tell me, hey, simmer it down. My parents would just ask me, okay, how's he gonna do it? And they'd help me reverse engineer the pathway there. And so because of that encouragement, I think I've just naturally thought a lot bigger, and people don't realize that, one, it's the same effort to think big as it is to think small, and two, it's actually easier to accomplish big things because when you're aiming for something so massive, that gets everybody around you super excited, which means now they're extra motivated and whatnot. I think it's like one of the secret advantages. I think that's one of the things Elon's caught on super early. Like his ideas are batshit crazy, but they're so crazy and they're so cool, it gets everybody excited. And maybe it won't work out, but you want to be part of the story because you at least will have fun.
Sure. Well, you know, I was kind of thinking, frankly, with Gail now, because you're saying you want to take it to the end. You may need to get some of the bigger investors on the cap table, right? And you said you just opened up an office in Palo Alto. Are you aiming for the A16Zs? Or are you already speaking to them, the Sequoias? What are you thinking there? And any tips to anybody else who wants to build something like you?
Yeah, I mean, we raised for the previous business. We raised from SoftBank, Founders Fund, Coastal Ventures. We had the chance to meet the Sequoia guys personally a number of times. Andreessen Horowitz team multiple times and whatnot. So we got to craft some really good relationships out there, and we've been very blessed that all of our big investors are going to be participating in this upcoming round we're announcing. So they're doubling down. So we're very blessed about that. I think in regards to tips for fundraising, my brother and I, the first couple of years, were probably the most rejected founders you'd ever met from a fundraising perspective. In 2019, we had a period of time where we probably had like $2,000 left in the bank account, and we bought one-way tickets to San Francisco. It was for this first company, a car sharing app. And we emailed 532 investors. The first 525 either ignored us or passed. Investor 526 says yes. They invested us in the last couple and passed as well. And then we also got for that business rejected by Y Combinator like 6 times. And so we got rejected quite a bit. And then with that second business, Lula, we were entering a pandemic, and so our mindset was, hey, when things were going really well, we couldn't fundraise, so there's no chance we're gonna be able to fundraise during a pandemic. And so we started getting contracts ahead of time before we really raised any money. And so when we ultimately did raise our Series A for that business, we had about 40 different firms trying to participate in it. And then when we did our Series B in 2023 for that business, we had about 130 firms reach out to us over a 30-day period of time. And so people always ask, like, what was the biggest change from when you sucked at fundraising to when you got good at it? And the biggest thing was just the business dynamics. We got to a point where we didn't need investors, and that ultimately just made them want to invest in the business more.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, so it sounds like you worked your asses off.
Yeah.
You don't give up.
Yeah.
You also said earlier as well, you work out so you're physically in shape. Any other things? I mean, you said you're mediocre on so many different things except your work ethic.
Yeah.
Is it luck? I mean, is there a little bit of luck in here?
Yeah,
or?
there's a bunch of luck. There's a bunch of luck. I won the lottery with my family. I think to have parents like that you dream and have that ambition, I think it's an incredible blessing. I think the other thing too is I'm a twin, and my twin brother happens to be my co-founder, but he's the same maniacal urgency, ruthless persistence that I have, and so that's been really awesome to have him. And I think the other thing too is just, a lot of it has been luck, I think. But I think we also created our own luck. And I think that's one of the things people don't realize is it takes a lot of luck to be successful, but you can create a lot of that luck. And like a great example of that is I got really lucky at Ali Reza from Plug and Play. He was an investor 526 that invested. I got really lucky that he invested in us. But the only reason I was lucky that he invested in us was because I emailed 526 people up until that point. If I had stopped at 525, I wouldn't have been lucky at that point. And so I absolutely think luck plays a big part, but I think you also have a lot of control over how much luck you create for yourself.
Did he read a unique email? I'm curious because when you send out like 500 plus emails, typically you're gonna write a template to a certain degree, right? Because it's just really hard to be personal on all of them, right?
Yeah.
But was there any keys to your emails? Do you think that?
Yeah, Michael and I have always been pretty good with emails. I think it's because we understand most people write really qualitative emails. We write super quantitative, and so we've always been pretty open about traction that we get. And so at that point, we were a top 100 app on the App Store and been on more than 500 campuses in all 50 states. And so we gave some pretty good metrics right off the bat, which I think grabbed a lot of attention. I think what happens with a lot of seed investors is you don't necessarily get the traction. The biggest reason why we had why we were struggling so much was because when we went out to fundraise, it was also around the same period of time that Uber and Lyft were going public. And so nobody wanted to invest in another shared mobility company with that. Had we gone out to raise with those numbers probably a year before, it would have probably been a very different story. But I think with him, with Ali Reza, he loves investing in young talent. So if you look at a lot of the investments that Plug and Play had early on, it was Google when they were first two guys coming out of a garage. It was Drew Houston when he basically had nothing on Dropbox outside of a little prototype. And so I think it's probably more so just like he's probably not Ali Reza wasn't accustomed to seeing somebody actually put numbers in an email. But I don't know. Again, I got super lucky that he even looked at it. They're such an active firm. Now that you say it, I'm trying to figure out how that they're so active and he has so much stuff going on. I don't even understand how he does it. And then again, not even thinking out loud, the guy answers his emails like this. And so I'm concerned. I don't think he sleeps.
It might have been timing. I mean, sometimes somebody looks at their inbox at the right time. So,
but he's awesome. If any founders are out there listening to this and you need a great early stage investor, email Ali Reza from Plug and Play. That guy goes to bat for his founders.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you were speaking about competition at that time with your rideshare stuff, but now you're focused on AI and insurance. So AI, everybody's like jumping into right now, but insurance. I mean, to be honest, this is the first insurance AI company that I had heard. Is there a lot of competition, or how's that?
There is in different components of it, and so. Like if you're doing, like we're setting to a voice AI, like if somebody just wants to use a voice AI agents, there are a couple players out there, but the way we really win is we've built more of a multi-point solution, and they're like better said a suite of tools. We sell to big enterprises that don't want to spend 6 months evaluating a voice AI and 6 months evaluating a text AI and then a GPT. They want that vendor consolidation, so that's been a big key of us winning deals. And because, to my knowledge, we're really the only group that's doing that and is able to handle the scale of the customers that we're bringing on. We don't necessarily have too much competition from domain-specific players. If we do come across some sort of competition from an AI company, it might be something like Sierra AI or Decagon, because they also have some sort of a suite approach. The difference with us though is because we're domain specific, and we also have some really nice bragging points, like Gail was, to my knowledge, the first AI to pass an insurance licensing exam. It was the first, to my knowledge, to pass the Series 7 exam. Those things carry a lot of weight when you're speaking to legal teams and procurement teams who have serious concerns about the accuracy of the answers the AI is going to give. And so we do see a little bit of competition, but it's funny, most of the competition we see, we always say is psychology. There's already enough data now to see like the AI is going to be far more cost effective than any frontline employee. It's going to be far better from an operations perspective than any frontline employee. But you still run into, hey, what's my employee morale going to be if they think I'm trying to replace them? What are my customers going to feel if they think I'm trying to create a wall against them? A lot of these folks are a little bit more risk averse, and so they're just, hey, I'm going to go with Old Faithful, the type of resourcing I've used for the last 15, 20 years. And so we come across a couple AI companies, but by far our biggest competitor, I'd say, is still psychology.
Interesting. Yeah. So would you say then it's a little bit easier to raise capital right now? Because I mean, raising capital isn't easy right now, but because maybe there's less competition, do you stand out?
I think we stand out more so because of our background. My brother and I have had some success in this industry, and so I think that definitely plays to our advantage. I do think it also does play into our advantage that there really hasn't been anybody that's put the stake in the ground as a domain-specific leader in financial services. You see Harvey AI, they're the clear leader in legal, Open Evidence, clear leader in legal. Even in financial services, most of the people are like the leaders, they're focusing more on investment banking, not necessarily on the retail side. And so I think we definitely benefit from the fact that there's an opening right now, but I think a lot of it also comes as well from the last couple of years of where we've been working. And I think this industry is so regulated and there's so much that goes into it. It's really hard for one of these brilliant CS students to just come in and start building for a bank if they don't actually know what needs to be integrated with a bank, with their LOS systems, or an insurance company and their management systems and so on.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to share, and I'm going to give you this book. I was spending some time on the unicorns within the fintech space.
Okay, nice.
So I put it in a little book here, which I'll share a little bit later. But what you speak of is definitely, I think, the unique part of fintech is there's all these pieces, right? And a lot of people, before you get into the business, they don't know that these all exist, right? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, it's crazy to me where we're at as. You're probably gonna have to tell me to shut up because I'm about to go on a rant. But I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to me to think where we're at in terms of fintech. So I have this whole theory that fintech is probably the most important form of defense tech that's in existence right now. If you look at things like Palantir and Anduril building incredible technologies, but a lot of the threats they're building for may actually never come to fruition in our lifetime. If you look at an actual threat that's going on right now, is like all the stuff that's going on with social unrest and political climate. If you look at every empire's fall throughout the course of history, a lot of it could go back to people just being really frustrated by the systems powering the financial services ecosystem. And so to me, I find it kind of crazy that everybody could admit the financial services pipes and systems are broken, and VC's just decided, hey, fintech is not going to be the area of investment now. It's the world's biggest financial services, the world's biggest industry. The insurance companies in the last decade have spent probably $2 trillion on IT. Banks have spent something similar. Everything's actually gotten worse from a unit economics perspective, despite implementing more technology than ever. And so clearly, the technology we built over the last 10 years hasn't been working. You have to rebuild the tech. And so I think this is the most exciting part ever, or exciting point ever to be building financial services technology. I think it's a legitimate form of defense tech. If you don't get these systems right, I think you are going to have a mutiny on your hand at some point in the future. And so for me, that's what gets me so excited. I think the other thing too is I literally think insurance and credit are the greatest inventions ever. I think they're the greatest form of innovation ever. And so I think about the ways that that credit and insurance open doors for businesses. It gives new opportunities in new communities. And so one of the things we're always thinking about is in the long run, in the next 60, 70 years, how can we use this technology to make insurance and banking and credit accessible to every human being? Maybe they don't want it, but how can we at least make it accessible to them? And it mind boggles me that people aren't thinking like that right now. It's almost like they saw everything that happened in the last 10 years in fintech. Ramp crushed it, Brex crushed it, but that was really it. For all the money that was thrown into the space, you only have a handful of players. I think it's kind of crazy, and I think it's crazy that people have kind of just moved on.
Interesting. Well, the banks, I think, are feeling it a little bit at least, no?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you think they're getting defensive? Do you think they're starting to ramp up their, AI divisions, or are they too slow?
No, I think the big guys are all saying they are, but they're not. I think a lot of it is like maybe JP Morgan is because they have so many resources, but the number 6 and number 7 banks on the rankings, and same thing with the insurance carriers. Like we go out and look under the hoods of most of those guys, and it mind boggles me again the difference between what they're saying on their earnings calls and what they actually have in reality. But I think it ultimately ends up presenting a lot of opportunities for startups like Gail or anybody else that's doing domain specific AI, because a lot of these guys are starting to feel the pressure of the markets. For the last 2 years, they've tried to build it themselves. They've seen that it's actually really, really hard to do, and so now they're coming to the tech nerds. And I think that's one of the things that's always also confused me is like, if I go to start a restaurant, nobody ever tells me, oh, there's a million people that can cook a steak as good as you. But for whatever reason, when you try to build software, everybody just assumes that anybody can build software. And so I think a lot of banks and institutions are starting to realize like, hey, this software stuff is pretty tough. Banking or insurance is pretty tough. Instead of trying to do 2 really tough things at once, let's stay in our lane and partner with one of these specialist companies. And so like we have seen over the last 6 weeks of 2026, more business and inbound opportunities than we can handle. And I think a lot of that has to do because 2025 was a year of the POC. A lot of people were resisting or saying, hey, we can build it on our own. I think now a lot of them are starting to feel the pressure. It's their 3rd and 4th earnings call now saying, hey, like we're hitting another delay, and we're fortunate that we're benefiting from that. But I think a lot of the other AI startups are too.
So I'm originally from Seattle, and I remember there was a lot of fighting between Seattle and the Bay for tech talent, and then obviously AI has changed the game as far as coding is concerned and things like that. But I still kind of feel like there's still this architectural, talent that engineers have, right? But I think there's more of a business acumen that oversees it. What are your thoughts being out of Miami, though? Do you think you're able to recruit some of those better, engineers or technical talent?
Yeah. It's funny because Miami had it, everybody said Miami had its moment in 2021 and 2022. I've actually never found it easier to bring people to work in office in Miami than now. Like we already have multiple offers to people that will be moving here over the course of the next couple of months. In 2021 and 2022 was actually pretty tough. And so, look, I'm not gonna pretend like Miami's engineering talent is better than San Francisco. San Francisco's in a world of its own. Like we've even compared to New York. Still in a world of its own, but it is getting far, far easier to recruit people in Miami. And I think we had always thought about Miami particularly being our go-to-market hub, our business hub, and then we would have our office in Palo Alto, which would be almost just as big, but with more engineering and product side of things. The way things are playing out, we'll probably have 60 to 70% of the team here in Miami, and we'll have a hub out there for the engineers and stuff like that. But we've actually found it's much easier to start in the last 6 months. It's far easier to convince people to come to Miami, and I get more inbound than ever. And so it's funny because I'm nowhere near as loud on social as I was 2 or 3 years ago, and I get just naturally way more messages from people asking to come work in Miami than I did 3 years ago when Miami was apparently having its moment. So it's a really good time to be building in Miami. I'm bullish on it. I think there's a lot of good habits that you can take from building in Miami. I think one of those is that you don't necessarily build an echo chamber. And so I do this thing when we get a new team member, my brother and I, we're Cuban, and we work right next to the most famous Cuban restaurant in, I guess, the world, or Miami. And so we'll do a tradition. We'll take them out to grab some good Cuban food, and then right after dinner, we'll take them and drive around Miami, and we take them to a bunch of strip malls. And if you come to a place like Miami, you'll typically notice there's 3 things at almost every strip mall: an insurance agency, a mortgage broker, and an accountant. And a lot of times it's 3 in 1. And what's really interesting is I tell them is like, hey, even though today we're primarily supporting the enterprise businesses because it's just better from your economic story, you want to build a good foundation. In the long run, if you want to build the generational business, this is who we have to build for. And I think if you're building in San Francisco, you oftentimes get into an echo chamber where you say an AI phrase and it's obvious to everybody around you. 95% of people where I grew up in the part of Miami group have never heard of OpenClaw or any of that. And so if you can build something that's easy enough for them to use, you have something special on your hands. Right. And so I think that's one of the things that's really special and people don't realize about Miami is the fact that it takes you out of that little Silicon Valley echo chamber is so valuable when you're thinking through product and business and marketing.
Yeah. I have 2 more questions, startup related. One is, I interviewed a long time ago the CEO and founder because I was working for him of DoubleClick. It was one of the earlier startups in this millennium, and he told me about Andy Grove's what's that?
His high output management book.
Oh no, he had one about only the paranoid survive.
Oh yeah.
And Kevin actually said, even though he seemed really confident, that he was actually he would go to sleep stressed out and scared. Yeah. And so, is there anything that keeps you awake, or anything that like gives you a little concern in building this third, startup?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Like, it's funny, if you ever take my brother out to dinner, you would swear we're 1 minute away from poverty or something like that. I mean, there's no shortage of things we have to improve. He's always, I don't know if you ever watched the movie Major Pain, but it's a really funny scene where the guy starts to scream that somebody looks at him the wrong way, and he walks up to the guy and he starts telling that he's got his agent Orange or something like that acting up. And so my brother's always saying the same thing about like how he's always stressed. I think, funny enough, the thing that stresses us out the most on a day-to-day is if we don't hear enough bad news. And so my brother and I always tell people, especially at the company, like, if we have a meeting and it's too rosy, something's going on, because no day is ever that smooth in a startup. And so I think what really stresses me out is a meeting with no bad news. Mm-hmm. But I think more, I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, I think more than anything with us, the biggest thing that keeps us up at night is falling to the temptation of building for ourselves, not necessarily our customers. I think there's so much cool stuff that's going out over there. You want to try a million things, and right now, because it's so easy to build a million things at once, you're really open to possibly losing focus. And so the biggest thing that I fear is we get caught up in all the opportunity, we lose focus, and then we stop solving problems for our customers. Mm-hmm. I think my brother and I, we've done a lot of things wrong throughout our career, but the one thing that we've done really, really well is develop products that solve problems for people. And I think that's why all 3 businesses that we've done have had almost immediate day 1 traction. Mm-hmm. They might have had a number of other issues, but at least from a traction perspective, they've always gotten pretty strong traction. And I think it's because we've always solved problems for our customers and people. And I think that's one of the biggest things that more than ever now, because stuff is so easy to build, that's one of the things that keeps me up at night, is like, how can we make sure that the team doesn't lose focus? Because in the past, it was tougher to build stuff, so you didn't necessarily take your eye off the ball because you had already put so many resources towards something, and so you want to kind of complete the mission. Here you prompt something and you have a full-blown app ready for the app store. And so I would say, like, the biggest thing that keeps me up at night is us falling to the temptation of building for ourselves, not our customers.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue actually, because AI, so many questions I could ask about AI, but I was just listening to, funny enough, another podcast, and they were talking about the distillation of businesses, what some companies are doing, like the Chinese actually, they will attack certain, like Claude, for example, and they'll extract so that they can replicate the entire LLM and everything about it. So all companies are basically susceptible to people copying their business. But I sense that's not a concern of yours. But do you have any worries about a bunch of agents all of a sudden doing all this stuff that might pose a threat, or anything about AI that concerns you at all, or are you just excited about it?
No, I mean, I think from a business perspective, there's not really anything that particularly scares me. I think if you look at most of the history, most businesses just die because of self-inflicted wounds, and so I think the biggest thing we're always just focused on is just, if you stay alive for the next 10 years, you can almost guarantee success, regardless of what your growth trajectory is or anything like that. You can almost guarantee success just by staying around by 10 years, especially if you're just approaching it from a statistical perspective. 90% of companies are going to die in the next 6 years, and so literally, if you just stay around 10 years, you'll be the last one standing. I think what scares me more than anything on the AI side of things is just it getting into the wrong hands of people. Like, there was a video that came out a few months ago when Sora came out. It's Sam Altman stealing, it's a CCTV video of Sam Altman stealing GPUs from Target, and it looks so realistic. I had to do a double take when I saw it for the first time, and that was the first time where I remember thinking, like, why does this even exist? Like, that's where we're at right now. What's it gonna look like in 2 or 3 years? I mean, that's more so my concern, or like I remember when I was in college, I got one of those calls where like, you have to send XYZ money right now because we have like your cousin or something, and I was freaking the heck out. And that was over the phone. What's gonna happen in the future when they're able to send me a video of what actually looks like my cousin or whatever? And so those are the things that concern me about AI, is it getting into the hands of the wrong people. In regards to the business, there's not necessarily anything. Again, that's why my brother and I do have that level of paranoia. Like, hey, bring us the bad news the moment it comes, because if you do, we're able to act on it quicker. It's less likely to kill us, and we can stay alive. We always say we want to stay alive for the next 100,000 days. You build a company that's around the next 100,000 days, no matter what number you put in terms of revenue or customer base, whatever, you're gonna hit it. You just may not be alive to see it, but you'll hit it. And so I like to say, like, the biggest thing that scares us isn't AI. It's just, again, like I mentioned earlier, falling into temptation, building for ourselves and our customers.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's the end of the startup questions, but I have a couple standard questions we ask our guests, and they're a little more personal. So the first question is kind of dedicated to my cousin who took her life when she was honestly around your age. She was really stressed out about life, but when building or when you're in mid-career, sometimes life just stresses the hell out of you. What are some ways that you or your brother have kind of figured out that helps kind of make you feel a little bit better, or things that kind of distress you? What are your tips on helping anybody who's a little bit younger how to deal with those times?
I think the biggest thing is, one, set up a happy routine. You're gonna have so many days that are super shitty. I think it's probably fairly evident I'm a fairly positive guy and like good energy and stuff, but even then I have days that just absolutely suck. And so I have a whole happy routine. Like, I have my music that I'll listen to when I'm in a bad mood. I'll actually go to the Cheesecake Factory when I'm in a bad mood. It's like my go-to spot. I get an Oreo cheesecake or a Cinnabon cheesecake. I refuse, even on good days, I refuse to listen to sad music. I refuse to watch sad movies. I take a walk outside every day. I do a no technology walk outside every day. Even if it's a walk for 10,000 steps or whatever, or going to the gym for 20 minutes, I'll always make sure to get some sort of disconnect from work. And so I have a whole happy routine. And I have happy episodes of The Office and Seinfeld that if I'm having a bad day, I'll watch those. And so I think it's really important for anybody listening to this to give yourself a happy routine. And I think the other really important thing that my brother and I both do is we live life intuitively. There will be days where I get to the office at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm there till 12 o'clock at night because I'm just ready to work. And my body and my energy feels good that day. There's other days where I don't have that level of energy and I may have to go take a nap at 4 o'clock. There's days where I just want to eat a bunch of cheese fries and I'm gonna stuff my face with it because intuitively that's what's gonna make me happy that day, and I want to eat like crap that day. But for the rest of the days, I'm gonna take care of myself physically and stuff. And so I think part of it's also just like develop your own happy routine, and then I call it intuitive living. Like if you want to sleep in a specific day, go sleep in that. Listen to your body and sleep in that day. If you want to eat something specifically because it's gonna get you in a good mood, listen to your body and fall into that temptation a little bit. You can fall into that temptation sometimes and not feel bad about it. And it's actually, I think that's ultimately ends up helping you in the long run if you do give into those little vices every once in a while.
Awesome. These next three are about heroes, role models, and easy question I'll share at the end. But so heroes, who would you say is a hero to you?
My parents. I'd put them both up there as like my superheroes. Both of them coming to a country that they didn't speak any of the language from was hard for them to assimilate to it. Literally sacrificed everything to make sure we always were in a good position, got everything that we needed, never complained. They worked so incredibly hard regardless of whatever they were facing. Like, I think they're superheroes. And I also think they're like my absolute role models. My dad bought himself he bought the family a farm a few years ago, and so to see his come up has been absolutely incredible. And so they're my heroes, both from a business perspective and also just a personal perspective.
That's beautiful. How about role models? Today's a pretty turbulent time, so it feels like role models are needed more than ever. Any role models you have?
Yeah. There's a few. I think like one guy that I admire a lot is Dylan from Figma, and so I think he has an incredible story. I think about his story all the time. Just like, I can't imagine the amount of frustration that guy had his first 4 or 5 years when Figma wasn't really getting that traction. He was watching everybody else's business go up and to the right, and so just the mental fortitude he had to go. I think somebody like Jensen all the time. What was Jensen feeling when he was 10 years into his business or 15 years and he saw these guys like Zuckerberg and stuff and their businesses taking off? And I think in the 2000s he was actually having down years from a revenue perspective. And so I think about guys like that they overcame so much. You actually really don't hear about him having any controversies or anything like that. Every time you see the guy, he's always in a good mood, having a bunch of fun. And so I think he's a tremendous role model. And then I even look at some of these young athletes, like, what did I say? I think a guy like Nikola Jokic, he's probably not the most obvious one, but his story is incredible. 40th pick in the draft, coming from a completely different country, coming from a different culture. You've seen the progression as time went on. He was somebody who had to earn it. He didn't have the starting spot early on. So those guys motivate me, and those guys are role models. And even though they're in completely different industry. You know, Dylan and Jensen are technically in tech, but they're in different sectors of the tech world. Those guys to me are great role models. I've read as much as humanly possible on those guys. I've watched all the interviews on them online. Those are 3 guys that especially inspire me for sure.
Now this last one is pretty easy, I think, but then again, you know, we have Cheesecake Factory behind us. So what's your favorite food?
Crispy chicken sandwich from Cheesecake Factory with a mac and cheese ball on top and cheese sauce on the side. They don't even have it on the menu. They don't even have it on the menu.
You have to order it special.
You have to order it special. They don't even have it on the menu. That's my favorite food. Either that or Waffle House. I like chain restaurants more than anyone you've ever met.
That's incredible. Yeah. All right, well, this wraps it up for the most part, but just in case other people get the privilege of hearing Matthew, just curious for these future podcasters, or, you know, who knows, maybe Joe Rogan will throw you on a show. How do they reach out to you to get a hold of you?
I'm pretty active on my LinkedIn, Matthew Vega-Sanz, active on Twitter. Not as active on my Instagram, but I check it probably once every other day or so, and so if you invest in me on any of my socials, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Well, thank you, Matthew. It's been honestly a privilege to spend some time with you.
Okay.
And no, seriously, you've been a great guest, and thank you for being here today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.